Rite of Passage, the podcast with Giabra Martin.
All right.
Because my only question is, Annie said I had to look pretty for this one. So how am I doing so far?
It's pretty good. I like the shirt. You got those kind of summertime vibes. You got the airplanes.
I'm sitting here in Palm Springs, so it kind of fits in.
I was going to ask, you got like the paintings behind you. It's got a very kind of Florida sort of feel or something.
Yeah, it's a hotel in Palm Springs, which makes it nice. I don't have to worry about cleaning up my house for one of these.
No, for sure. And are you a musician too? I see the guitar behind you.
I play with that guitar a lot. I wouldn't call myself a guitarist, even though I've spent most of my life practicing it.
Yeah. I don't know. There's this interesting relationship between books and music. Like my last podcast, the gentleman is a musician who wrote a powerful memoir about basically his mom had MS and like she was his biggest fan. So like he was taking care of her while chasing the musician dream. And but yeah, every author I talk to, they're like, God, I got like my playlist, you know what I mean? Like I kind of wrote these books thinking about music. I got these songs and I don't know, there's an interesting interplay between these two art forms for
Gosh,
sure.
that's so up the alley of my next project that it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, tell me about it. We're gonna dig into the book because I'm
Okay.
honestly I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while. I
Good.
feel like this is
Me
just such
too.
an interesting story.
Yeah.
And I've been working with Anna, so I guess we'll introduce you two to start. So you two are brother and sister. If you want to just say hello, we'll start with you, Don.
All right. Good morning from Palm Springs. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and hi, this is Anna Schmidt, and I cannot wait to talk about this book and just have a fun conversation.
Oh, this
I,
is cool.
I
So
didn't know you were going to be here, Anna. That makes it nice. It takes the pressure off me.
well, I saw that. Okay, Anna posted that video the other day. Don, you were on like it looked like a morning talk show talking
Yeah.
about the book.
Yeah. That was the local ABC affiliate in Omaha, Nebraska. They
Wonderful.
called up and wanted to know if I wanted to be there. And of course, there I am. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, no kidding. So they called you. It wasn't like I'm going out on a campaign to find them. They're like, hey, you're from the area and you come on in and let's talk.
Yeah. I had put feelers out and everything. And then when I
Yeah.
got the call, they actually invited me to come on. So.
Yeah,
Honestly,
Donald has done a great job. Like he's been interviewed on live radio shows. He was like on a 30-minute special radio show in our hometown. And then
wow.
he got this live TV show too. So he's killing it out there.
He's making moves. No, it was cool to see you. And you're very
Yeah.
fun to like. I know I was watching Anna's video. It was a lot of fun watching you. It was just like good vibes, good energy, like light. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but you got
Yeah.
just like fun energy about you. Yeah. So about the book, I have a copy here. I am a fan. Oh,
Yay.
I got the green screen. Occasionally doesn't work. Do one of you, because do you guys have a copy handy?
So I don't, but I have my earrings.
Here, I probably have a copy. Let me grab it.
Wonderful. Yeah, my green screen keeps cutting it off. Oh, if I put it in front of my shirt, now we got it. Oh, so the book is called Where We Land, and
It is.
for the audience who may not be familiar with this book, you will be very familiar soon. You're going to want to buy this. So this is a book about Don's life as a pilot, and then you two co-wrote it. So like you brought your different skill sets together, his experience, Anna, your experience with writing, and you're like, you know what? Let's turn this into a book. I opened this book up in the middle, just started like reading, because I got like long TBR and all this stuff. But I just kind of wanted to get a sense of it like a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh, like I love this. Like I love the energy. It's like fun stories and it's like wildly entertaining, but there's also kind of moral teachings and lessons. It's not just like, oh, here's my memoirs, or it's like it was just fun. I was like, there's like good wisdom in here, and it's just very fun to read. And I'm like, this is a perfect memoir. Yeah.
There's a
Well,
lot of hard
thank-
knocks. And I was going to say, like, Donald is super vulnerable. So he is not painting himself as some perfect person for sure. There's a lot of like foibles and mishaps and things that make probably for very entertaining reading, but maybe not so fun for Donald to live through at the time.
I'm at the age now, it's all behind me. I can enjoy every moment of it.
So Don, how long were you a pilot for?
Well, I actually still am flying for a living. I've got a retirement gig right now. That's where I am right now on a layover. I fly
Nice.
a private jet for a private individual.
Well,
But
that's kind of cool. Just
I've
one
been a
guy.
pilot since over 50 years now. So, and doing it
Wow.
for a living for 40. So,
Whoosh. Is that so? It
Yeah,
sounds
he
like that's
literally, if you read the, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no. I was going to say. So it sounds like that's something you kind of always wanted to do. I mean, 50 years is a very, very. So you've just always loved airplanes. And you're like, you know what? There's like I can't be without them or something.
yeah, my first experience, I was around 14, and that's where I actually touched my first airplane. One of my first memories, and I can't remember how old I was, but I had to be in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 watching an airplane fly over. And so
Yeah.
it had to start pretty young. I grew up
Right.
in a small little town, and one of my goals, I thought, I got to get out of this place. How do I do that? And
I
that was
wish I could
probably,
fly out of here. Like, oh
yeah,
wait, I can.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Anna,
Donald literally broke into aviation. Like
Yeah.
in our first chapter, it talks about he kind of broke into a guy's machine shed on the edge of town just so he
Mhm.
could go in and explore the airplane that the guy flew. And Donald snuck in and he like got in the airplane and was pretending to be a pilot. And the guy found him in there and chased him down. Donald
Wow.
was riding his bike and the guy was chasing him in his Ford 150. And like Donald ended up, upside down in a field with this guy looking down on him. But, in a strange turn of events, the guy didn't like totally reprimand Donald. He said, like, you're going to have to work this off. You're going to have to drive a tractor and mow the runway for me. But he
Wow.
actually ended up giving Donald airplane lessons. So he offered him flying lessons for what was it, $12 an hour, and
Well,
those were the first lessons that he got.
God, life is
a
unbelievable.
very common question I get all the time is what is the most scary thing that's ever happened to you in aviation? And it's being 14 years old, showing up for a flight lesson that's going to cost $12 and not having $12 in my hand.
I just showed up bluffing. Be like, yes, I swear I got
Yep.
the money.
Yep.
Right here.
It's exactly right. You even have the look down, look at the shoes a
That
little bit.
attitude, though, that's the attitude that gets people places, right? Is
Yeah.
like not taking no for an answer. And it feels like I hope people are still like that, where there can be some misunderstanding where you break into some guy's hangar and he thinks you're there to steal or vandalize, and then you kind of explain it. You're like, no, I love airplanes and I can't stay away and I know this is my future. And the guy's
Yeah.
like, kind of puts you on a path, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that in and of itself. I mean, that's a hell of a story. I mean, real life is honestly,
Yeah.
I mean,
Gosh,
so,
and isn't
yeah.
that's what we have to do as independent authors, right? We are like breaking down machine sheds all over town, trying to get people to notice our books. And, we want to fly and to have a chance
Breaking
to
in everywhere.
show off our talents.
Oh, I trick people into reading the book. Like there's all these like psychics on TikTok who are like, for a $30 donation, I'm sensing I can give you a reading. And I'm like, all right, counter offer. You read my cards and I'll send you a copy of my book for free. I'm like, listen, I don't normally do this, but I'll give you a copy. And I'm just like, I'm jamming my book down people's throats. And that's the way we're breaking into machine sheds everywhere we go.
That's right. And I've read 2 of yours and I loved them. They were so good. So
I
definitely, if
appreciate
you're
it.
listening to this podcast, go get some G. Edward Martin books.
I love what we're all doing here. This is cool.
Yeah.
So, Anna, I was looking at your profile too. So you are an award-winning journalist.
Yes.
Tell me about that. How did you get started? Like, tell me where
Yes.
did it begin? And
Well, it began in the same place it did for Donald, in this tiny town called Chadron, Nebraska. And as a senior in high school, I worked as a high school correspondent for our local newspaper, which turned into a full-time job after I graduated. And so I was working at I was taking classes at Chadron State College while maintaining a full-time job at our local newspaper, the Chadron Record. And then at the age of 20, I was recognized by the state of Nebraska as being the top journalist under the age of 30 in the state.
wow.
And that was an incredible honor. And I've won several awards for my writing and some for my photography back in the day. And yeah, but then I sort of took a hiatus from writing. I married my high school sweetheart. We moved out to North Carolina. We have 3 amazing children. And I have been dedicating my life to homeschooling. So I, stay at home,
Yeah.
I educate these kids. But then when Donald approached me with this writing project, I was like, oh, can I even still write? Is it like riding a bike, or am
Right.
I way too rusty? And I started out a little rusty, but I think it kind of I got a little better each chapter. And then, we rewrote it several times. And yeah, I feel like I'm back in my stride, and it's a lot thanks to Donald. And I feel like having that journalistic background, and this was way before all of the craziness of the media now, but there was just such this sense of integrity back when I was in college learning
Mm.
journalism about you cannot just take someone's word for it, right? If your mama says she loves you, get another source. And so
Ask Dad if
I
it's
feel like
true.
that I feel like that helps me in my writing as well,
Yeah.
just to be able to fully research, to not just take one point of view or one perspective, and to make sure that all the bases are covered.
I feel like a little bit of journalism would make anyone a better author. Like, so one of these things in journalism is like the space that you have to work with is very limited.
Mhm.
So like you can't be like fluffy and no extra words. Like everything has got to be like this is serving the narrative. Like these are details that need to be here. There's no room for just the clutter. And like because I have two books
Don't bury the lead.
I swear I have two books I totally screwed up because I had like too much to say and I'm like I was like describing cooking breakfast and like someone read it and they're like, I don't need to know that there was also toast and bacon and they just say breakfast and I'm like, oh yeah. Like I should have been a journalist. That would have been better. Like stay on the task here.
On this book, that's interesting because Annie wanted so many words, and I told her, I said, I don't think I like myself that much to come up with that much to write. And as we got going, it was what we were going to leave out was the tricky part, not.
But that's how you know it's a good book, right? It's
Yeah.
like we have so much we could talk about and like picking and choosing the very best ones. Like and cutting away at the marble to reveal the statue versus, like we're trying to fill up this basket with whatever we can find. So how did this book come about? Like I was kind of thinking about I was like guessing how this happened, but how did you two come to write a book together?
I have considered myself a writer my whole life, and I like to write lyrics and music and stories, but I never really took it serious. And I called Annie saying I want to write an expose on the airline industry.
Okay.
And so I sent her some of the first several chapters of what I was thinking, and the title of this book was originally going to be Flying Sausage, because my thought is people really want to know what is in their sausage when they buy it. And
Yes.
and like Annie says, she says people don't really want to know what's going on underneath the terminal. They want to get on that seat in the airplane and go where the ticket says they're going. And so she started reading that stuff, and she said, no, she says, I see a memoir here, not an expose. And that's how it started. And so, which now all of a sudden I get to write and talk about me and not the airline industry. And it turned out to be a lot more fun than I guessed it was going to be.
Yeah. So the
We
original
also
expose.
discussed the airline.
Oh, no, go ahead, Anna, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, we also do talk about some of the safety regulations within the airline industry. We talk about the future of AI for the airline industry. So we do go into that a little bit, but it is all told with a very personable storytelling narrative that with Donald's hilarious anecdotes and various things that pull the reader in. So it's not super dry, like you're not reading about regulations and everything in the same way. Yeah.
I do tell people if you're a pilot, you need to buy this book. If you think you're going to be a pilot, it should be required reading. But even if you just occasionally ride the airlines occasionally, you want to know what's going on behind that locked door up there. This is a source for you.
I did read one of the stories that was like I just popped it open in the middle, and there was, if I'm remembering correctly, it was a woman who had an urn, of like a deceased family member she was trying to bring on the plane, and like she was getting jammed up about it, and like you basically pushed the whole thing through it. You're like, all right, this is getting out of control. Like, you like ran it by the rest of the crew. Can you tell that story?
That is the only time that I know of that I purposely delayed a flight. She came on board, carrying her, sat down, and now the TSA comes in, follows her a few minutes later, and says, "We've changed our mind. That urn can't go upstairs; it has to go on the bottom." Well, she didn't want it done. She wanted to keep it with her, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So back, the TSA are not brain surgeons. We didn't go to medical school and say, hey, how would you like to be a TSA agent instead of a doctor? And I don't know a nicer way to say that, but so I told the TSA, you need to go get your supervisor because this isn't going to happen. The supervisor comes out, and I don't think she understands the story either. But I said, this airplane's not moving until you guys get off the airplane. And now we're taking a delay. And in the airline industry, a delay is the worst D word you can say. You can push 10 minutes early. A lot of situations, 1 second late, and you're late. And so I decided I'm going to get out of my seat. I'm going to face the passengers, and I'm going to explain to them what's happening. So I'm out there in front of the passengers with the mic in my hand saying, oh, here's the situation. I am delaying this myself personally. I will take all responsibility for it. This TSA agent right here wants to take away, and I'd already asked the woman, can I tell the people what's going on? And she said, sure. So I said, they want to take away the ashes of her husband for this flight. I'm not going to allow it. And finally, they get off the airplane, and they were filling out lots of paper and report. But when we landed, I would guess a high percentage of the people came and said, thank you, you did the right thing. Some of them wanted to shake my hand. So there's always that few that were, had us somewhere to be quicker. But
those human stories are so valuable, right? Like that's something that's so missing from like so much of society is just like human decency, right?
Especially in this day and age, there are times you have to stand up and say, I don't care what's right or wrong. I'm going to do what's right. And maybe there's a list of words here that tell me what is right, but here is a situation that's right.
There was an experiment that I forget who did it. They kind of remade this experiment that like Stanford or someone did. It was basically like there's 10 people in on it and one guy who's not, and they're all standing in an elevator and 10 people are facing the wrong way. All the people who are in on it. And the one guy who's not is like, am I crazy? And then like inevitably 9 out of 10 people end up turning around because they think like they're the one who's in the wrong. So it is hard to stand up to a bunch of people who disagree with you or, whatever it may be. And I feel for the TSA guys because who knows what instructions they get. Clearly they let her through security and then they like walkie-talkie someone and everyone's got to ask someone and they go to corporate. They're like, what is our policy on earns and ashes? They're like, stop that woman. And it's like, I just work here. So I kind of feel for them a bit, but it's a little ridiculous for sure. Like this lady with an urn is not, a threat to everybody on the plane. But
everything in aviation is what I can speak of. I can't speak of life in general, but everything in aviation comes down to some good, solid common sense and the safety of everyone. I mean, I always say, a lawyer, when he's doing his job, he might have one life in his hand. Well, I have, 190 lives in my hand. And of course, as Annie brought up to me one time, well, a school bus driver could say the same thing. So, it keeps me grounded, keeps the arrogance away.
Oh, 100%, 100%. Hey, so what is your favorite story from this book?
Man, Annie, you take that one. I'll think about it.
Oh, thanks.
Let's do it. Annie, what was your favorite one to read?
Probably the famous people. That's everybody likes to talk about the famous people, and I have had the fortunate opportunity to fly with a lot of very well known people,
Cool.
And politicians. I always separate the two.
Yeah, for sure. Real
5
people.
U.S. presidents.
Yeah.
Whitney
No kidding.
Houston, Bob Hope. Who are some other names?
The presidents are big ones. Bob Hope, I like. Gosh, you're making me draw a blank now.
I know, right? Well, Michael Jordan.
Yeah, that's cool.
We used to fly Johnny Carson's people in to do the show.
Right.
And so I had Johnny Carson on board. John Denver's on board. In fact, he actually played one of the guitars I own. So
I was about to make a terrible joke that he should have stayed on your plane, but
yeah,
he left on a jet plane.
He's like, man, you should have kept flying with Don.
Yeah, he actually John Denver was an accomplished pilot. His dad was a professional pilot, and he was type rated in a Learjet and a couple other airplanes. So
he
crashed his own plane.
Yeah, it was a home built, and it had a modification in it, and as simple as it can be said, the modification put the fuel selector back over his head.
Oh.
the one he had been flying, the fuel selector was in front, so he switched behind his head to switch the fuel, which is just opposite. So he went to left tank when it was actually off.
They couldn't see it and just like,
Right.
oh, I'm going to go the normal
Yeah.
direction, but everything was
Of course,
backward.
nobody ever knows the exact situation, but that's what they think happened. And
yeah, like no one was there, obviously.
you know, a lot of famous rich people are flying things they shouldn't be flying, but in his case, he was a very accomplished pilot. So
yeah, and I love his music too. That was like tragic story. So pardon the off-color joke.
Yeah.
Because he was a good dude. I mean, he wrote like the most American. Like they say, Americans don't have drinking songs, but like you go to any bar and they play, West Virginia or country roads.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, like we are. We definitely have drinking songs that everyone knows.
Yeah, we picked him up in Omaha, and I have an old Guild guitar I bought when I was 14 years old. I just put it on board thinking maybe he'll play it. And we're up at altitude, and he's back there, got it in his hands playing it.
I'm just gonna leave it here and see if he'll play it. You're like, oh yeah.
So I asked him if he'd sign it, and he said, "No, I'm not. I don't destroy great guitars like this with my signature." But,
seriously?
Yeah, I wish he would have signed it, but
right.
yeah.
Well, let me ask you: when there's a U.S. president or former U.S. president on the plane, does that add to your sense of responsibility, or you're just like,
not really? And that's a great question because I like to answer this question.
Nice.
In the world of being a pilot, I worry about my own butt first. If my own butt is taken care of, comfortable, and gets there safely, so is everybody else. So
you're like, if I'm safe, we're all safe.
In the corporate world, I like to say, I don't care why we're going where we're going. I don't want to hear that you've got $1 million deal going on. And and same way with once that door shuts, it's the same operation it always is. So it's fun famous people are fun almost after the fact. You can say, hey, guess who I flew today, or guess who I met. And
right. It's more fun like telling about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But most of them probably like don't say anything in sleep, or they have headphones in, or they're
right. Yeah. Yeah. And somebody told me once too, if you treat famous people like family and family like famous people, you'll never have an issue. And
it's actually pretty solid advice, honestly.
And most of the and the old saying, the bigger they are, but I've never met somebody that acted, well, except for a few politicians you'll read about in the book. Well, so that's why I always separate politicians and people. The people I own have been great.
Because people are just, that's the thing, no matter how famous someone is, like they're just people.
Yeah.
Right. Like they get tired, they have good days, they have bad days, they got their own issues, their wins and losses, And I think we put people on a pedestal like they're 10 feet tall because they're on a stage.
Yeah.
But the politicians, they're a different thing entirely.
Donald has said that he prefers the times that he has flown corpses and organ donors because they don't complain.
Yeah.
I almost lost my coffee. Oh, yeah, there's like, they're very quiet. Like, how was the flight? Like, oh, the passengers were great. Didn't say a word. No complaints. We were a little late. Didn't mind. Yeah.
In the airline world, alcohol probably brings on as many problems as anything. And again, that's a problem you don't have to deal with in the other side of it. So,
I believe it.
Speaking of stories I love the story, Donald, where you got that lady really drunk, the really old lady. She got drunk on the plane.
Yeah, don't give up all my. Don't.
Well, here's the deal. So this woman was very irate because she wasn't allowed. Usually, they allowed the seniors to, people who need extra help or whatever, to board first. Well, apparently, this woman hadn't been given that option, so she was not able to board first, and so she was like raising hell back there and saying that she was just irate because she did not get priority boarding. And so Donald came back there and he was like, well, I could give you a spot in first class, like as a way to make this up to you. And she's like, no. And Donald's like, well, should I unload the entire plane and then have everybody reload again and let you go first? And she was like, well, that seems kind of silly. And Donald's like, well, how about this? We have you come up to first class. All the drinks are on me and we'll just have a good old time. And she was like, okay. And apparently they had to carry her off because she was too drunk.
Yeah, she was not being conservative. She was drinking everything they handed her.
Hey, first time in first class, right? Do you
Yeah,
remember her drink of choice?
I don't know that I ever knew that, but
Might
probably
have been
whatever.
champagne or something.
Usually, when you offer when you say the drinks are on me on an airplane, they buy what costs the most. You know,
Right.
whatever. Yeah, what's the most expensive drink? That's what they want. So,
Oh God, that's really funny, though. Well, I appreciate that. Like, I mean, obviously they should let elderly people board first, right? You're waiting in that line on like the
Hmm.
not the terminal. What do they call the? Damn it, I'm like sleep deprived. Like the tunnel that goes to the airplane. Like the
the jetway, the
yeah,
jetway.
like standing there and like waiting
Yeah,
for people. Like I can imagine some little old lady having little trouble with that. But honestly, I'll be
Yeah.
honest, this boarding thing is out of control. Like they'll be like, okay, priority group, and then they're like military, and then they're like,
yeah,
okay, police. Then like if you know a police officer, like
yeah,
if you have a police uniform you wore on Halloween, come on.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, it'll say group one. I'm like, oh good, I'm gonna be up there quickly. And
Yeah.
there's like 10 groups before group
You know,
one.
For real.
the airline is the only business I know about where there are so many prices for the same thing. I mean, if imagine if you go into the grocery store and you want to buy a pack of hot dogs, and there's 15 packages, and this one's $4, that one's $1, this one's free, this one's $39, and it's all
Right.
the same brand name. So
I mean, the first time I encountered that, it's like, okay, I got a ticket on the plane, and like, would you like a seat on the plane? I'm like, is there standing room on the plane? Like, what are we doing here? Like, yes, I want a seat, and it's like, it just feels like ridiculous questions. I'm like, all
yeah,
right, these people are out
and
of control.
in defense of the airlines, which I can do now. Uh, there's something about people, and I don't know what it is, but you take one of the most intelligent people you know personally, and he's leaving his house to go get on an airplane. I swear to God, the closer he gets to the airport, the dumber he gets. The closer he gets to the airplane, the dumber he gets. By the time he's sat down in that seat, he's a blithering idiot with no thought process in his head. And
Oh, it's a real
why that
thing.
is, I don't know. People get dumber as they get close to an airplane.
For me, it's usually the bar while I'm waiting for the,
Well, and that could be some of it, right?
like, I have a couple drinks to take the pressure off,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, like, yeah, it's gonna be a long day
And
flying
these
here.
and these days there is so much fear with flying. I think especially as the media has pounced on some unfortunate, literally unfortunate things that have happened recently. But now like the algorithms are so prone to show you every single incident that happens with airplanes. And so there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of people with a lot of questions about airplanes. And I
Mhm.
think that's another great reason to read Where We Land is
Yeah.
we demystify it. Donald does such a great job of, kind of walking along beside you as you fly an airplane. And I remember, so the very first time that I ever flew with Donald, I was probably 4 or 5. And
Mm.
the only thing I remember from that flight and it was just like this tiny little one engine Cessna type thing. And the
Right.
only thing I remember is right when we got out, I threw up, thankfully not on the plane, but all over the runway. Horribly
Right.
embarrassing. I think I just had motion sickness. So then this last summer, I went out to Omaha and Donald
Mm.
took me up in his plane. And I was scared. I was scared. And I was like, I took Dramamine. And Donald's like, take this trash bag. You're not puking in my plane.
Like, no,
So
careful,
I
my
had the
plane's
trash
moving.
bag. I didn't get sick. And like Donald, the whole time we were flying, he's like, okay, it'll be a little bumpy when we do this. Or, he was walking
Yeah.
me through it and I didn't feel scared at all. So I think like having somebody with a whole lot of knowledge, like right beside you, in the
Yeah.
airplane seat, or just being able to read more and more about something that a lot of people are scared of, just brings such a level of comfort.
Well,
Yeah.
and a lot of it, like you mentioned, is the media, and this I don't believe this is in the book, but the story I've told a lot is it's Greg, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So imagine you and me, Greg, jump in my rent a car out here, and we come out to this main intersection, and we get in a car wreck, and we don't survive it. It
Mm.
would probably make a little bit of news because you're somebody, you have a podcast. But
Well,
that's about as far as it go. Now imagine you and I jump in a single engine little 2-seater airplane and we crash at that same intersection the same time of day, and
right.
it would make national news for weeks maybe, and
Yeah.
tremendous investigations and accusations and I think it's something like 200 people a day die in car wrecks.
Right.
To me, that's news. Why don't, that would be a tremendous news story, but aviation is spectacular enough, I guess. And in the media, there's a saying, and I remember it from radio, and it was fear sells beer. So if you can make a person afraid, they're going to watch maybe a few more minutes of your show.
Yeah, there's a lot of sensationalism. I see this with a lot of stuff. Like I love like tornado videos. Like I could watch them all day. I think they're extraordinary. And I'm in Nashville, so like we get some big ones sometimes, but it's like there's so many more people following tornadoes, filming them, amazing cameras, and it feels like, oh my God, there's so many. I don't think there's necessarily any more than there's ever been, but it's just like, talking about it makes things appear like they're much more prevalent and common than they are. I mean, you think about how many planes come and go every day and land successfully. I mean, I can't even imagine how many people are transported all over the world via airplane every single day. And I've always actually found it miraculous that things don't go wrong more often. Because to me, it's like a giant Pepsi can in the sky. And I'm like, I have no idea how this works. I have no idea why it works. And these planes are tough as hell. Sometimes you get into turbulence where you're like, this turbulence is going to rip this plane in half. Those planes are damn tough for.
They're designed for what they do.
Right.
So it's interesting. You're in Nashville. I spend every minute I can in Nashville. My daughter lives in Nashville. She's a doctor,
nice.
And my son-in-law is a musician in Nashville. So,
it's a great place to be. And my wife's big into music and stuff. So like this was the place to be. And it's also, the other thing. Quick shout out to Nashville. It's changing rapidly. So I'm hoping in 10 years it's still very cool. But it's a dreamer city. Like I mean, there are so many artists, musicians, authors, filmmakers, actors, a lot of entrepreneurs, people starting like, I wanted to start a bagel shop. And this is a community that's like, they like that kind of, entrepreneur chasing a dream spirit. I'm like, this feels like the American dream.
I saw an interview with Kid Rock. He recently moved to Nashville, and they asked him if he likes Nashville. And he said, I really don't. And they said, why? He said, if I go to a restaurant, the busboy is more talented musician than I will ever be. The competition is fierce out here.
I heard a thing. It was like Nashville is like the largest gathering of artists in human history.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's accurate. And I mean, it's like, you wouldn't believe the talent. So hey, next time you're here, like, you want to go hit the bars, we'll listen to some music. Like my wife and I are always down to get the babysitter, and we'll go listen to some live music.
We'll bring Annie too. She can
there we go.
Love that. No, honestly, that would be a lot of fun. I don't know. I want to
sure.
Like, authors and people more in person. Like everything is like TikTok and Zoom, and I'm like, you know what? I want to sit down at the bar, have a nice beer, and let's do the human thing.
Nashville Writers Meetup. I'm calling it now.
Yeah, I would love that, honestly. So, Anna, do you have any works in progress right now? Like, you feel like you're reinvigorated with the writing. What do we got?
Yes. So Donald and I our second book is with beta readers right now. It's called The Ding Dong Altar Boy, and it is a comedy. Okay. So a lot after we finished Where We Land, everyone was like, is there going to be a sequel? Why did you not tell this story? Oh, I'm so glad you didn't tell this story. Things like that. Right. And so we decided to put together like a book of short stories. So these are all the stories that weren't airplane related. Like Donald mentioned earlier that we were trying to figure out, what couldn't go in the book. Right. And so there's a lot of crazy stuff in there, like a infamous tantrum I don't remember throwing at Spaghetti Works that Donald reminds me of every chance that he possibly can. There is a story about Donald jumping over a dead body on a running trail. There is a story about like
we've all been there.
Dogs. There's dog stories in this book. There are, just crazy stories. Right. And in this very tense and unpleasant political climate that we find ourselves in, with all of the horrible news that we are bombarded with at all times, like this is the book that you want to overhear. Like these are the stories that you want to hear at a bar. Like you want to eavesdrop on these stories so you can go tell your friends and make them laugh. So I feel like this is kind of the antidote to all of the hard things that are going on in our world right now. So we are very excited, and we're hoping that it will be released this summer.
Well, perfect timing for sure. Because you're not wrong that, I mean, it's like, I don't even turn on the news. Like I'm looking outside birds are chirping, sun is shining, it's spring, there's daffodils, and then you turn on the news and it's like, oh my God, the world is ending. And I'm like, shut up. Like, it's a beautiful day. Just like, shut up with your sensationalist craziness.
I get up in the morning, I turn it on and for the weather, and I watch the weather. And if I forget to turn it off, 10 minutes later, I'm thinking, oh my God, what is that? Where's the remote? I've got to get that off.
What is that awful sound? It's like, oh, just people telling you the world is ending so they can, keep you watching.
Or a station that's running Gunsmoke or something, and then I'll turn the volume down at least.
So are these stories, like, obviously they didn't fit in with like the pilot kind of category, but are they more like both of your stories or like family stories, or?
I'd say a little bit of everything. Well, the title is my first experience as an altar boy, and who was one of my all-time best friends was the coach. He'd been an altar boy for a few days, so now he's my instructor. And it was quite a mess. I mean, everything that possibly could go wrong went wrong, but it was because he was pushing me in the wrong direction and trying to make me do whatever was wrong and embarrassing.
That's pretty funny.
That's a good start. That's where the title comes from. But it's the funny things that have happened in our lives, and I read Ernest Hemingway's a short story book years ago, and I can remember thinking, God, this guy's just talking about things he's done. I could probably do that.
Right. And it connects if it's not like too personal or dark. Part of the problem, people write memoirs and they're too like, they almost need like a cathartic kind of thing. They're just like, I got this unsettled childhood stuff. And you're like, I mean, that's great, but people aren't going to relate. I mean, make people laugh, make people connect, give them what you had to learn the hard way. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it'll just be a lot of fun.
One thing,
not to interrupt you, Don, we got 1 minute left. I know Zoom is going to kick us out. So we're going to get kicked out randomly. But I'm going to put all the links to the book, to find you guys' website, all that stuff in the description. So, Don, run wild, and then we are just going to suddenly get kicked out pretty quickly here.
I sure appreciate that. This has been a fun one. We've done a few of these. This one has been a lot of fun, and I'm taking you up. I'll look you up in Nashville.
No, please do. And, when your next book is coming out in the summer, let's get back on here. Let's run this back, do it again, and I'll get the paid one.
Thank you.
We'll have more than 40 minutes.
Okay.
Hey, Anna,
sounds
Don,
awesome.
It was wonderful meeting you too.
Yes, you too.
Yeah, thank you. You guys got to check out Where We Land. Unbelievable. The reviews, unbelievable. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Hey, we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Right. Bye-bye.